Thank you so much for staying tuned. If you just joined us, this is International Forum, and I am Wilson Omasho. Well, today is all about what is happening between Russia and Ukraine, and of course, the intervention of the U.S. Some of the opinion that there is a leaked paper or a leaked document talking about the peace deal, and that isn't going down too well with Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. Even the troops, they've been talking about it. Well, let me just summarize it for you so I can get to know where we're really coming from. It's like Russia might have to keep what it has earned. Yes, the region they've conquered in the Donbass region, that is among the peace deal. They talked about also reduction of the forces to 250,000. It says you not exceed 250,000. That is almost disbanding Ukrainian army. Now, if a nation do not have an army, would you consider that to be a nation? As it stands right now, Ukraine can boast of over 600,000 military. That was before the war. After the war or in the war, you know what happens. Reduction. But Russia is saying it will not be more than 250. And it's like America is saying yes to it. From what they are saying, after all, Ukraine is losing so much. For peace to reign, keep what you've conquered. Let the world go on. This is going to focus our discussion in this edition of International Forum. With me here in the studio, I have a legal practitioner, political affairs commentator. Join me to welcome Barrister Henry Wanzo. Barrister, thank you so much for coming on today's show.
Wilson, good afternoon. Viewers at home, it is another opportunity to be here to discuss and look at the issues from the reasonable man point of view.
All right. So let's put the show on the road. Russia-Ukraine were above 3 years and counting, right? And they have numerous strategies of inflicting maximum damage on each other. But the larger portion of damage is coming from, let's say, Russia against Ukraine, because Ukraine is a theater. Ukraine is the host, so to speak, of the war. Before we delve into the peace plan, what do you feel about the war so far?
Well, it's unfortunate that a lot of lives have gone the other way around, but sometimes I begin to ask myself, what is the role of the United Nations and other organizations who would have played a major role in ensuring there's peace in the world? But unfortunately, while others are planning there should be peace in the world, some other persons are looking for avenues to sell their arms, others are looking for avenues to give out arms, others are looking for avenues to support the one country or the other. So you find out that it is more political than you look at it from the ordinary man point of view. But so far so good, Ukraine has suffered more loss than the Russians in terms of human casualties and also in terms of territories that have been ceded, especially in the eastern part of Ukraine. But all the same, if Trump is able to play his card well, ensuring that parties meet at a roundtable conference and see how these hostilities will come to an end, to me, it is the best, because the world needs peace at this point in time.
So it's the best because the world needs peace. Now, if you take a look at the trajectory of the war, before Donald Trump became the president, it was like almost on a balance sheet. We're going to see Ukraine being funded, being helped by the U.S. massively to, defend themselves against external aggression vis-a-vis from Russia. But right now, it's like no support. Do you feel that this is a deliberate act on the part of the U.S. to weaken Ukrainian forces? After all, Ukraine making advancement cannot be unconnected to U.S. aiding them.
Well, you see, it is not only U.S. that is aiding. Some countries in the NATO too who actually wanted them to be part of them equally are supporting in one little way or the other. But again, you know, as a big brother, America is always there, playing its role, as it were. Donald Trump has his vision and he has his mission. His mission that there should be peace in that part of the world. And to me, trying to relax his support, as it were, might not be unconnected to his strategy, ensuring that at the end of the day, these hostilities will come to an end. Just as you find out in his 28 plans that he has, we talk about the issue of the areas that have been, the territories that Russia has already conquered should be ceded to them. You also find out that we're also looking at the issue of the military in the area of reduction in terms of the military number of persons. Again, you also look at the issue of making Ukraine not to be part of the NATO. Those are part of the agreement which he is looking at. That maybe we push Zelensky into understanding why these hostilities will end. But again, another thing you must know that Zelensky, Putin, on the other part, might still want to play his card as he usually does in the past. Because when you talk about the issue of ceasefires and others, at the end of the day, the Russian troops are still pounding heavily on the Ukrainian territory, which to me, has caused a lot of damages in terms of human, in terms of materials, in terms of facilities that would have made life better for people as it were. But if at the end of the day, Trump is able to bring the two gentlemen to a round table and make them see reasons why these hostilities need to come to an end, to me, it is the best, and the world will be a better place for us. The Israelis and the Hamas, you know how he played his role, ensuring there is a little peace in that region, as it were, for now, but not a total peace, because it's just like in Nigeria, when you talk about Boko Haram, you talk about bandits, you talk about kidnappers, these people, you try one way or the other, trying to cut short their activities, but some persons will never relent in having one or two skirmish here and there. But to me, if Trump is able to mediate and the gentlemen see reasons why they have to cease their hostilities, it will be the better for the world and for their countries as it were. Because a lot of children are fatherless as we speak. A lot of women are husbands. They are widows as it were today because of this crisis. You remember at a point in time they demonstrated that a lot of them have been made widows because of this crisis in that part of the world. So to me, if Trump is able to play his card as usual, they'll be better for us all and those Ukrainians and Russians too.
All right, some are saying that in this war, it's like America is not being fair to Ukraine. Specifically, Donald Trump is not being fair to Ukraine. Now, what's your take on that?
It depends on the angle at which the people are looking at it. Are you looking at it from the angle of the terms of settlement, which is of the plans, the strategic plans he had? Or are you looking at it from the angle that he's no longer supporting them in terms of the military support as he used to be in the past? The man has his reasons for trying to play down whatever he has been doing before now. And those reasons are best known to nobody can actually tell why he has decided to slow down his support, which he usually give in the past. It might be from my own point of view, it might be for the fact that he wants this war to end, because it is only when one person is at the receiving end, one person is seen to look as if he is losing, he will now want to, okay, let me concede for whatever arrangement is being made for there to be peace. So I believe he might be his own strategy, in trying to bring Zelensky to accept whatever is going to be the terms, as it were. But again, the question you ask, is he being fair? Fair depends on the angle at which you look at it. Fair depends on the angle at where you are standing and looking at it, whether he was being fair. The man has his reasons. The man wants the war to end. The man wants the people of Russia and Ukraine to be at peace with each other.
Wanting the war to end by making Ukraine to look weak, by not giving them weapons, is that the best option?
It might also be from the angle that the members, Donald Trump is not acting solely. You have the American government, as it were. He cannot take a decision solely on his own. They might have also looked at it from their own point of view and decided that that support of military support, have to be reduced, as it were. You might be looking at it from the angle again that there's a lot of casualties. Let's be candid with ourselves. And a man who you are fighting, it's just like it's not like the case of David and Goliath. I don't want us to look at it there, because you have God there, playing his role in the life of David, as it were. In the case of Ukraine and Russia, we cannot liken it to that, because from recently you'll be able to see that Ukraine has suffered more loss than the Russians in terms of territories administered. You also have casualties in terms of human casualties. You also have casualties in terms of facilities as it were. So to me, so Trump alone can actually say why he has decided to reduce his support, as it were. But for me, peace is the best option at this point in time. If the parties can come to a round table, 3 years going to 4 years counting, the war is still going on. And a lot of persons are dying day in, day out. Just as I said earlier, what is the role of the United Nations? What is the role of NATO and others? Who are those people there? Have they been able to come into the issues and look at it objectively? The two presidents, as they are very stubborn persons from my own point of view. Zelensky is stubborn. Putin is equally a very stubborn somebody who will not want to listen, as it were. So you find these hardcore leaders who believe in whatever cause they are pursuing, and they pursue it to that extent, not minding what the consequences are, because the consequences are not directly on them. The consequences are directly on the people. The consequences are directly on the facility. The consequences are directly on the economy of the country, as well as the life of the people generally, as it were.
All right. If you just joined us, this is International Forum. We'll go on a break. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Thank you so much for staying tuned. If you just joined us, this is International Forum, reaching you live from Benin City, Edo State, Nigeria. We're taking a look at the Russia-Ukraine war, the proposed peace deal by the U.S. We're analyzing the impact. Now, if you take a look at the conditions given by Russia to Ukraine, at first, when Joe Biden was the president of Ukraine, things were not like this. Anyway, before we continue our discussion, we have Honorable Etiosa Igebo join us virtually. Honorable, good afternoon. Pleasure to have you join us this afternoon on this wonderful edition of International Forum. Can you hear me? All right, it's like we're having some technical hitches there. When we're able to reconnect, definitely you'll be hearing his own sound, his own opinion and view. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon, Fresh Prince. Can you hear me?
All right, I can hear you loud and clear right now. I believe that we're following the trend, and I know you have one or two things to say about this particular situation bedeviling Ukraine right now, about the peace deal about to be proposed by America. It leaked, and Ukrainians, majority of them, they're not happy about it, saying Russia can keep the lands they've conquered, and Ukrainian troops must not be over 250. Take it up from there.
Well, I think this conversation has been going on for a very, very long time, and I want to think that the proposals by the Americans, especially under the government and leadership of Donald Trump, should be accepted by the Ukrainians. The reason is because the more the fight goes on, the more territories that the Ukrainians are losing to the Russians. So I think there's this understanding that the Russians are pushing deeper into Ukraine by the day, and the Ukrainian soldiers are abandoning their positions and trying to defend other regions from different locations. And on that note, many more settlements are falling into the hands of Russia. I think it will only make economic sense for them to accept this deal now and work with the proposed peace plan, while they have some kind of a little bit more contributions in a way on what they think that they should do as well as a country, but majorly accept the offer so that the war would stop and they'll lose more territories to Russia if it were to take it through the military means. So I think the proposal should be accepted.
He said he thinks proposal should be accepted. Remember that Zelensky vowed to fight to get every ounce of land occupied by the Russian forces, including Crimea. Do you see Zelensky agreeing to this particular deal, Barrister?
Well, it's going to be difficult him accepting, but I know with pressures here and there, making him to see reasons why he has to accept, knowing fully well that he has lost a lot of officers.
But these are Ukrainian territories.
Well, accepted they are. You know, the Ukraine, they all form part of the former USSR, as it were in the past. So it's not as if maybe they are new to each other. They are not new to each other. But with the situation, politically the issues can be addressed even after the war has ended. politically the issues can be addressed. Those territories that have been ceded while the war was going on can equally come back at the end of the day. But to me, from a reasonable man point of view, there's no need fighting this war continually. The casualty has been much, especially on the side of Ukrainians, and continually with what is going on. The support they thought they would have gotten, America would have been the largest support would have gotten. But the same America today is asking them, my brothers, you have to shield your sword, as it were. And the support they would have gotten cannot come with a man who is asking you to make peace with your neighbor. So it's going to be difficult for them if they
make peace with your neighbor. At what cost?
Sometimes you have to make sacrifices when it becomes necessary, knowing fully well the consequences, as it were. That America is asking that there should be peace, you have to cede some of the territories that has already been conquered, reduce the number of your soldiers. Again, the issue of becoming a member of NATO should be cancelled for now and all whatnot. All these are some of the plans that have been put in place. But to me, I know when parties sit down at the round table, they will be able to look at the issues critically, and at the end of the day, parties will be able to decide, say, this is what I am taking out of this agreement, this is what you are going to take out of this agreement. They will have a meeting point at the end of the day where they can now agree as, oh, this war has to end. To me, just as I rightly said, ending the war is the best option for Zelensky at this point in time, because a lot of casualties, a lot of women are widows, a lot of children are orphans, as the way you can look at it, because some have even lost their parents while this war was going on. So he should see reasons why this war needs to end now, for the interest of the people of Ukraine, and for the fact, just as my brother there said, if he continues the war, more territories will go. And when more territories go, it becomes more difficult at the end of the day. I know he's talking about Crimea, he's talking about some other territory that has been, ceded due to this crisis. But again, he has to end this war at this point in time, because those who will support him are the same persons who are saying, let us have a meeting, let us agree, let us look at the issue from a critical point of view and take a decision once and for all.
Taking a decision once and for all. Well, let's go to Honorable Echiosa Ige. But now, you said Ukraine should accept. But Zelensky is saying that every ounce of land must be recovered, including Crimea. Now, some of the people that it's like U.S. is in support of Russia since Donald Trump assumed office. And that whatever is happening right now in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, he has pre-planned it already to give Russians those lands that they claim to have called them for help. Now, how do you think this will balance interpersonal relationship, international politics, and the way the strong nations of the world view smaller nations? After all, some are saying that this is an example of how bigger nations subsume smaller nations.
Well, I think as the wars takes a longer time to complete, unfortunately, the worst of it is for the Ukrainians. I understand that the Ukrainians will want to also contribute their concerns, because they've actually fought bravely over the 4-year period. However, Russians, for some reason, has the upper hand, because remember the U.S. government has been trying to broker peace between the Russians and the Ukrainians, looking at the international concerns from the European Union concerns and the Ukrainians themselves, in direct contrast to the position of the Russians. And every time they have a deadlock, the war continues, and the more people get killed on the both sides. But obviously, it seems like the Ukrainians are losing more. So, are we going to allow this war to get on or carry on until the Russians eventually take over the whole of Ukraine? Or will it be wise at this point, knowing fully well that the Ukrainians does not have the sort of firepower that the Russians do enjoy, to broker a deal and let go of some of the arrangements that they have, that they cannot join NATO, but they can join the EU, and they should expand and reduce their military size to avoid maybe Ukrainians rising up against them in the future, whichever way that it is. I am not saying that the Russians has outright, you know, um, uh, facts or troop on their path to invade Ukraine, but the underlying factors that has been from the beginning, and so it's still on the burning front line of this conversation that they can't join NATO, and it wants to demilitarize Ukraine, and they will live as brotherly nations, and the European Union should not move, or the NATO shouldn't expand to the east. So I think for me, if you ask me over and over again, I would advise or suggest that the Ukrainians, take a chill pill and understand that if they stop the war now and they reach a truce, their citizens will stop dying and the rebuilding of Ukraine to start from there. So I will repeat again that the Ukrainians should accept the deal and find a way to work with what they have and maybe make some suggestions that will be somewhat fair to the situation at hand rather than losing everything when Russia gets to the capital city.
All right. Thank you so much for your opinion. Well, you heard Mr. Ukraine should please go ahead and accept it. But they've been in this war for over 3 years and counting. Some moment they tasted victory in some particular region, maybe kind of an enclave or a village, but later overrun by the Russian troops. So that if this thing should happen, any country that can easily move to another country to occupy some parts of that nation. Some are saying this kind of an agreement will not be too cool when you talk about international relation, global politics. Take it up from
Well,
there.
it's a fact that it will not go down well, especially when you talk about global politics and international relations, because smaller nations will also look at it from the angle that if by tomorrow, just as you have Nigeria, you have some other neighboring smaller countries who can wake up one morning and decide to annex some of their territories, all in the name of one reason or the other. But again, when you look at this is a war that has been there for going to 4 years and a lot of casualties. So many things has happened. And America, through Donald Trump, it's a man who always talk about peace when it becomes necessary for him to talk about peace. He did that between the Israelis and Hamas. And now he's trying to see how he broker peace between Russia and Ukraine. To me, it is a good idea, just as I rightly said, because it will go down, in history that there is peace in that part of the world. Accepted that peace that is gotten not on a platter of gold. A lot of things has happened. Somebody will feel cheated, just as the Ukrainians will feel cheated because part of their country has been ceded due to the war. They have lost so many persons, a lot of casualties. As men has died. Cannot be less than 20 to 30,000 men has
more than that.
More than 30,000, 40,000 men has died during this period of this war. So those are the angles where Zelensky and his people will be looking at. After we have suffered all these casualties, after we have suffered all these traumas within this period, men and women, we have always stood our ground that we will defend our country to the end. Because that is their position. Their position is that they will defend their country. If it requires them being the last men standing, they will do that. But again, sometimes wisdom plays a major role when you look at issues, and you have to see it from other people's point of view. Though it's going to be painful, as it were, but again, it is the best option at this point in time, putting into consideration the number of casualties, putting into consideration the number of facilities that have been destroyed. Because it's going to take a long time for Ukraine to rebuild itself, especially those areas that have been touched while this war is actually going on. It's going to take time to rebuild. It's going to take time, for the people to be healed of this trauma that they have passed through. The psychological and the mental torture a lot of person has passed through while this war has been going on. It's going to take a long time for them to be healed. But in the interest of peace, I believe that Ukraine should see how this war comes to an end. Painful as it were, but it is a necessary end that will bring succor to them and those around them too.
All right. This is the International Forum. We'll go on a break. We'll be right back. Do you feel that Zelensky will agree to this deal, or it is going to be fight to finish? We'll be right back. Don't go away. Thank you so much for staying tuned. If you just joined us, this is International Forum, reaching you live from Benin City, Edo State, Nigeria. It's all about Russia and Ukraine war. Analyze the peace deal, being put on the table right now, though leaked, yes, by the U.S. Now let's go to Honorable Etiosa Igbo. You get to realize that Ukraine has been fighting for their territorial integrity, and you telling them to give up now, give up what they've been trying to protect, might not go down too well with them. Do you see Zelensky accepting that deal?
Well, I think they should accept the deal. I think I heard my brother speaking about maybe them not taking the deal or fighting to the last man, presumably, or looking at ways to look at critical aspects of settling the deal. Like Donald Trump, the president of the U.S., told Zelensky, he doesn't really have much cards on the table because the world is not dictated on his pace. He's trailing in the war. Like when this conversation started about 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I told you on this studio and on this live TV that Russians will have their way and Ukraine will have their say. If they keep fighting and keep killing their men in Ukraine, who would stand to rebuild the country? They've lost a lot of men. I heard my brother suggesting that maybe 30,000 people may have died or soldiers or whatever. I'm not sure. They're talking about some soldiers that have died in the hundreds of thousands. If you can have about 7,000 dying from satellite image according to Donald Trump a week, multiply it by 365 days times three or four, you will see that a lot of thousands, maybe in the millions, have been killed on the both sides. So to me, I don't think Zelensky understands what leadership is about. I don't think he understands what the controversies and engagement of war is about. It's not just enough to be a comedian, become a president by popular demands, and all of a sudden you plunge the country into a deadly war that has no end, and women and children are being killed. They made women fatherless, children and kids motherless, and the men has practically been destroyed, and he still want to continue to fight, begging for arms from the European Union and foreign partners. To me, I think that would be ill thought idea for Zelensky at this time to even imagine with any iota of doubt that he stands a chance against Russia in this war. First and foremost, Russia as a nation is two times or three times the size of Ukraine. In terms of population, the Russians are way more than Ukrainians. If the Ukrainians are willing to sacrifice 20 million people by virtue of having an equal balance in the war, Russians can afford to sacrifice 60 million. But in this case, Russians are the one with the hypersonic weapons. They are the one with the satellite reconnaissance. They are the ones who can map out industries and establishments and power generating facilities, who can bomb it with hypersonic weapons and all kinds of missiles like the Oreshnik. Even on ground, the Russians seem to have a lot of firepower, whereby they produce more arms faster than the whole of EU put together. So when you look at these KPIs, these key performance indications, and the engagements of war and losing people, I think Zelensky does not even really have what it takes now to dictate for the Ukrainians whether they should back up this war or not. Well, maybe the Zelensky himself should go to the war front. Maybe by the time he goes there and he's not coming back, the new leader may decide to go into real truce with the Russians. So for me, I don't think it makes any economic sense. I don't think it makes any logical sense want to continue on this path. 3.5 years to 4 years on, so many people have died day by day. The Ukrainians are losing more territories. To me, I think that this particular deal, what Donald Trump is trying to put on the table, should be at the front burner, not what the Europeans are saying. Because with all the Europeans have said, all that has happened to the Ukrainians is that they've lost more men and more territories. They've been killed by the Russians and slaughtered. I don't think Zelensky and the naysayers or the think tankers of Ukraine should allow that to continue because I don't see them winning the war. So why not negotiate and just allow peace to reign and start to rebuild your country? And I don't even think today, if election was to take place in Ukraine, if Zelensky will come distance tenth in that election because he has taken them to a war that first and foremost they didn't achieve what they wanted to war for. They couldn't join NATO, and a lot of these weapons and the fights and the areas that they said they were going to hold back with the Russians, they couldn't. Every day, Russians is winning more territories. They are literally bombing Kiev now, and I don't think Zelensky should allow that to continue. They should take the peace deal, have some areas of negotiation on the gray areas, and maybe get the superpowers like the US to compel Russia to agree to those terms, and then let the war end. If not, they will end up losing the whole of Ukraine to Russia.
Say that Zelensky should really concede to the proposition or the leaked peace plan orchestrated or planned by the U.S. Join us right now in the studio. He's a lecturer in Uniben. I call him the prof because whenever he is analyzing, get to realize that we'll go back to class, so to speak. Do you want me to welcome, allow me to call him the prof because he's a prof to me, Professor Felix Osaime. Thank you so much for coming. Do late. But it's okay.
Good afternoon.
It's all right. Good afternoon.
Yes, Atom, good afternoon.
All right. So right now there is a leaked proposal, so to speak. Nobody knew how it came about, but whether it was you that made it to leak or Ukrainians just got a hold of the paper, nobody knows. But the content is really causing some serious stir in Ukraine. Disband your army. It shouldn't be more than 250,000. The land occupied right now, conquered by Russia, remains with Russia. Then also spoken about the aspect of EU deal. But take a look at this too. Do you feel that this deal is fair to the Ukrainian?
Well, all is fair in love and in war.
Wow.
And this is a war situation. We cannot run away from the fact that power politics is at play here. Ukraine, as at the time the USSR disintegrated in 1991, Ukraine had a huge stockpile of nuclear weapons that later was moved to Russia. So that was an effective power base that Ukraine lost as at that time. And Ukraine now is just one of the former Soviet republics. The major power Ukraine has right now is more agrarian than political and technological. In looking at it from that angle, Ukraine also got involved in high-stake politics by trying to join NATO. And that is what Russia has been resisting since 2014. Even as at the time Russia annexed Crimea, it was not this contentious because people still felt that Crimea was part of original Russia and Russia needed access to the sea, which Crimea offers because Crimea has access to the Black Sea and the area is always open to international shipping and for Russian submarines to go out to sea effortlessly. But if they go to the North Sea, it can be frozen for certain parts of the year. So geopolitics came into the issue. And Russia has constantly argued that Ukraine should not join NATO. What caused the present debacle from the year 2022 was Ukraine's attempt to get into NATO. Meanwhile, before that time, there was the issue of Donetsk and Luhansk that Russia was also trying to seize because there were separatist movements in Ukraine that the Russians were supporting. But the blowout was the special military operation that Putin himself ordered from 2022. And that has brought Ukraine to massive devastation. Although Ukrainians have also put up a very good fight with support from the United States of America and other Western powers as well as from NATO, it has not been an even fight. Russia has more power and it was an unequal match. Ukraine has suffered extensive devastation, particularly the capital Kyiv and other parts of the country. In fact, Ukraine has been under military law since the commencement of this special military operation by Russia. So part of Ukrainian territory has also been seized by Russia. Ukraine has not actually entered Russian territory. Rather, what she has been doing is to launch drone attacks and launch missile attacks to maybe rattle the Russian military morale. And Russia also, at a point, brought in mercenaries that further devastated the Iranian heartland. So if you put these things together, you now see that there is no way, ordinarily, even in conventional war, that Ukraine can defeat Russia. But Russia, too, can not easily also flatten Ukraine. So that has been kind of stalemate. So it has led to Russia leaving the G8 to that reduced to G7. Russia has been facing sanctions from the US and other Western powers. Russia has also used the opportunity to test new missiles, like the hypersonic missile in Ukraine.
Satan 2.
Yeah, and Russia has also gone further to do something very interesting. Russia used the period of this debacle to strengthen herself economically. Because she began to insist that if you want to do business in Russia, you must buy things in Russian rubles. So they gradually demystified, in fact, they began to de-dollarize the international market system. And Russia pushed closer to China and other BRICS countries. So it's been more of Russia asserting herself internationally. Ukraine has now become the playground of a new proxy war. And proxy wars usually have greater impact on the theater of activity. In this case, the two big elephants actually are Russia and the USA. Ukraine is the battleground. Now, whatever peace deal is coming out, I definitely built up this discussion so that you know that the peace deal will definitely not be in the way that the Ukrainians will have an upper hand. Because this is power politics.
But it's the land.
Yes, what sovereignty makes
It's
equal.
the territory.
What sovereignty makes equal, power makes unequal. We cannot run away from that fact. And the deal that we are talking about that has leaked, of course, they said actually they should have 600,000 soldiers, not 200, 600. In fact, as of now, they stand at about 880,000.
Yes.
And they are telling them to reduce to 600,000. Part of the territory in Donetsk and Luhansk should be left for Russia. Part of the area they took from Crimea should be left for Russia. And Ukraine should not join NATO. But Ukraine has been giving guarantees, though not yet concretized, that they'll be giving security guarantee that they will not face further attacks. As we are discussing now, Russia is still attacking Ukraine. They are still attacking Kyiv. So the bombardment, whether by mortar, by missiles, and by drones, has not even stopped. And the retaliatory capacity of Ukraine is dependent on support from the US and other Western powers. So it's been a very, not complex, but confusing situation.
Confusing in what ways?
It's confusing because you are seeing the person at the receiving end struggling to stand on his feet with support from somebody that is standing behind him, propping him up, giving him weapons to fight somebody that is bigger than him in his front. So that's why it's confusing. But it's not complicated at all. You can easily see through that it's proxy war. And Zelensky, as much as the young man has always been patriotic, trying to insist that this is our country, this is our land, that the motherland must be protected at all costs, it is getting close to when he has to take the step back and say, what is the way out? Because there's something we call end game. Yes. And in end game, you ask yourself this question: where are we going to end in this discussion? And in this discussion right now, as it is in Ukraine, the Ukrainians are saying that they will have to throw in their towel. That's just the way it's going to end.
But Zelensky is saying that.
It doesn't have to say that openly. You see, the optics are a bit obvious. And if he says that openly, you say, oh, we have given up. That's defeatist. It doesn't have to say that. He can simply say powerful pressures from powerful states prevail on us. That's a diplomatic way of saying we have stepped back. It has to be diplomatic. You don't just openly go and shout. What about the lives that have been lost? What about the destruction to the country? What about the national infrastructure that has been wrecked, that has to be rebuilt? And there is already plans to set up an international coalition of support for Ukraine. So Ukraine is not even likely going to, of course, this is macabre politics. They've lost something, but they're going to also get a lot back in return. So interesting. It's very, that's why I say it's confusing. But it's not complicated at all.
Well, that does not mean that countries that call themselves police of the world, America and its allies, are they too scared of Russia to tell them to back out of Ukraine? If you other countries, immediately they'll tell them no negotiation, get out of that country or else according to that trope, we bomb and bomb and bomb and bomb. But in this case, It's not happening. Are they scared of Russia?
Not really being scared of Russia, but again, you look at the man who is at the helm of the affairs. Because there are certain persons who are not ready to budge, just as you have in the case of Putin. Putin, with all sense of humility, certain people, you look at him as a man, somebody will say he's a madman, a man who will not want to listen. He's tailored to us, carrying out that which he has made up his mind to do. So such a person, you'll be very careful, dealing with him. He's just like a suicide bomber who has tied the bomb around his waist. He is not interested. His life does not mean anything to him. That is the same situation you find in Russia today. The man has made up his mind. The man has been there for a very long time, and he has, succeeded in a kind of, being able to put it in these people that they so much believe in him, and even those who have the will and the courage to challenge some of his actions, they are kept somewhere, out to avoid them, infiltrating the people, trying to remove that mindset which he has been able to implant in them. So that is why they are, not that other countries are afraid, pushing harder, but they are looking at what will be the consequences. Will the man decides, to use nuclear weapon? Will the man decide to go gaga? Because, all these other powerful nations are trying to put him to where he belongs. So, to me, dialogue, parties coming to a roundtable conference, looking at issues critically from a reasonable man point of view, putting again into consideration that they are not the only persons there. You have the people of Russia, you have the people of Ukraine. Just as we rightly know, thousands is not 20, not 30, not 40,000, men, women, and children have died, all in the process of two persons trying to exact it on each other. The man pointing hand, the other man pointing hand, but whatever you can do, I can do better. And that is what you have find. Ego comes in. Those who are supporting, whether rightly or wrongly, are there playing their role, as it were. So that is the question I ask again. What is the role of the United Nations? Where are all these people, in this whole theater of war as it's going on? What role has they been able to play to ensure that there is peace between these two neighbors? But unfortunately, either directly or indirectly, they seems not to have the courage to challenge some of the actions as well. I see America as a United Nations organization, because it is whatever America says automatically becomes what happens. So.
All right. Well, Honorable Echosage, but what if Zelensky says a capital no to this proposed deal, or to the proposed deal, or a peace plan, so to speak? What do you think will be the next line of action by the U.S. government or even Putin?
Well, if Zelensky says no, it's obvious that he's the fifth columnist in Ukraine, whose Russian President Putin rightly described as a narcissist who was brought into Ukraine through the back door by the colonial masters, which my brother Professor described as a proxy war to destroy Ukraine in the first place, and as a way of trying to get to Russia. I remember that at the peaks of Europe, during the world financial crisis, certain citizens of Europe suffered certain loss through the financial crisis, and there was abject poverty in those countries. Remember one thing that is very certain: this war is between the West and the East, and those in the West are the country that was visible, like England and France and all these other European countries, and the United States under the leadership of Joe Biden, who started this senseless war. But then on the east, you have Russia, you have China, a very massive country back in Russia. Likewise, North Korea and other countries, Belarus and whatnot, also supporting Russia on the other end. So the war was not purely a Russian war. Even Iran, Iran also supplied ammunition to support Russia. So they believe that if Russia was to go down as a buffer, the East become vulnerable to the Western idea of occupation in the modern day warfare because of the kind of people that have been in the American government. I think in my own submission, I don't think Zelensky has got or exhibit such ability to reject the peace deal because Donald Trump has made it very clear for them to fight it out, and every time they do, Zelensky suffers more. If he was in the front line, I believe today will not be breathing anymore. So on that note, in my own candid opinion, is a situation whereby it was a good timing by creation that somebody like Donald Trump became the president of America, who doesn't even like the the Biden and the Obama type of leadership or ideology, because he was a victim of it as well. And I want to applaud his effort since he came into office, trying his utmost best to stop the slaughtering of kids, young women, and children who was forced by martial law into the war front, where Zelensky is still hiding in the bunkers, playing around and joking around as a strong man. He's not a strong man. It's easy to send a young man to go and die on the front line whilst you are there somewhere using the martial law with corruption charges revolving around the government. So to me, I don't think he has such balls. I don't think he can say no, because I think the people from the inside out might be trying to keep their integrity together, not to become vulnerable to the Russian, harsh approach towards this war like it's been, and maybe trying to give Zelensky a bit of support, not knowing fully well that deep down they may not be happy with him. So standing against that peace deal will not be in the best interest of Zelensky.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Honorable. And that is your last line on this discussion. Well, Prof, you're going to cap off the discussion. If it's been Zelensky, what will you do? Because what I'm saying is he's saying no to that deal because this is glory to Ukraine. Get all land back and push Russian troops away from Ukraine.
Now, sincerely speaking, Zelensky will not play hardball. That's asking for hardball. In diplomatic negotiation, you must be ready to make concessions and make compromise to get what you want. Zelensky knows that his back is against the wall. And Zelensky is not the power shot here. The power shots here is the United States of America under Trump and Russia under Putin. They are the ones that will decide finally how this thing will be resolved. Zelensky is going to ask for something between both of them, but he cannot decide finally how it will go. What is important is that he should begin to accept that there must be a rollback. The damage to Ukraine is extensive, but there are guarantees that Ukraine will be rebuilt and there will be massive reconstruction. That's already a plus on one side. We should not always look at ego. Ego is what we say, I will not go back. He cannot say that. He's a president and this is a war situation and he's not going to make that decision alone. There are other factors. The international economic system was rattled by Russia's attack on Ukraine. Transactions were disrupted. Food supplies from Ukraine halted extensively. After a while, they restarted. Those things are gains that Ukraine can easily recover. Russia has been making a lot of money selling oil and gas to Europe. And they say Europeans are the ones supporting Ukraine. I mean, why Russia is using the same money that he makes from selling things to Europe
to
hammer Ukraine. Ukraine. So you can see that, that's why I said it's not complex, but it's confusing. So every person will look at what we call the Mexican standoff in negotiation. And this is where you say, what am I going to get? But to get something, you must be willing to give us something. And that is why when Ed Bull was discussing the international political system, he said it was anarchic. Anarchy is the rule here. And you create some order from the anarchy. Now, in this same situation, I heard Honorable Tisa asking of certain things that can be done. You also raised the issue of United Nations. United Nations is not an entity unto itself. United Nations is as powerful as the nations that make up United Nations. And who are the nations that drive United Nations? The 5 powers that are in the Security Council. And these are what? The United States of America, Russia, China, Britain, and France. So if they agree, Ukraine must fall into line. So it is just what Ukraine can get. We cannot run away from the fact that there will be loss of lives, but that's why I said war is ugly. And if it happens,
you know how it's going to end. Thank you so much, gentlemen. As you can see, our time is up. Let's see if Zelensky is going to accept this deal. But the deal entails that the land that Russia has been fighting for, they are going to get it. You can't be told to reduce our military might, reduce it by 250, that is going down to 600,000. Well, a country without a military might, that is up to 1 million. Would you call that a country? Anyway, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on today's show. We'll do it again next week. God willing. Bye for now.